Steelers Nation, tonight is not just another preseason game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are heading to Buffalo for their preseason finale against the Bills. And while this game technically does not count toward the regular season record, it could be extremely important for several players fighting to remain on this team. Because once this game is over, Mike McCarthy and the Steelers coaching staff will have very little time left to make their final decisions. The NFL's 53-man roster deadline is coming on August 30th. That means tonight could be the final opportunity for several players to prove that they belong in Pittsburgh. And there are several major storylines you need to know. First, let's talk about the quarterback situation. Rodgers is currently the veteran leader of this Steelers quarterback room. Mason Rudolph brings valuable NFL experience. But the most interesting part of this competition involves two young quarterbacks, Allar and Howard. And this is where things get really interesting. The Steelers are not simply trying to determine who their backup quarterback will be. They're also considering how many quarterbacks they should actually keep on the 53-man roster. Mike McCarthy has not completely closed the door on the possibility of carrying 4 quarterbacks. And that would be extremely unusual in the NFL. Most teams prefer to carry only 2 or 3 quarterbacks because every roster spot is extremely valuable. But Pittsburgh's situation is different. Rodgers gives them an experienced veteran starter. Mason Rudolph gives them an experienced backup. And then there are 2 young quarterbacks who the organization believes could have future value. Howard and Allar have both received opportunities during training camp and the preseason. So if the Steelers believe that sending either young quarterback to the practice squad would expose them to being claimed by another team, keeping 4 quarterbacks becomes a legitimate possibility. But there is a major problem. Keeping an extra quarterback means losing a roster spot somewhere else. And that is exactly why tonight's game matters. Howard had a difficult night against the Jets. He threw 2 interceptions in the first half. But that does not automatically mean the Steelers have given up on him. The coaching staff understands that young quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. The bigger question is how they respond. Allar also needs to continue showing his development. Against the Jets, Allar completed 11 of 23 passes for 110 yards. Now both young quarterbacks have another opportunity against Buffalo. This could be their final major audition before the Steelers make their roster decisions. And for Steelers fans, there's another interesting angle. Ben Roethlisberger has publicly discussed the possibility of Pittsburgh keeping both young quarterbacks. His argument is simple. If the Steelers try to place one of these quarterbacks on the practice squad, another team could potentially claim him. And Pittsburgh could lose a young player it specifically selected and wanted to develop. So tonight is not just about passing yards or touchdowns. It is about decision-making. Which quarterback looks calm under pressure? Who can operate the offense efficiently? Who can limit mistakes? Who responds after something goes wrong? And most importantly, who gives Mike McCarthy a reason to keep him in Pittsburgh? But quarterback is not the only position we need to watch. The offensive line is another major storyline. And Pittsburgh has received a huge boost with the return of first-round rookie Max Iheanachor. Iheanachor has returned to practice and is preparing for his preseason debut against Buffalo. The Steelers selected Iheanachor with the 21st overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. However, an upper body injury during training camp kept him out of Pittsburgh's first 2 preseason games. Now he's finally back, and this is extremely important for the Steelers. The offensive line has not been completely consistent throughout the preseason. The right tackle position has been one of the areas receiving plenty of attention. Dylan Cook and Broderick Jones have been involved in the competition. Now Iheanachor gets his opportunity. This is more than just a preseason appearance for the rookie. It is a chance to show the coaching staff that he is ready to contribute during the regular season. Can he protect the quarterback? Can he handle pass rushing pressure? Can he create movement in the running game? Can he recognize defensive assignments? And can he perform like a first-round draft pick? Tonight could begin answering those questions. Now, let's move over to the defense. And this may be the most exciting news for Steelers Nation. Jalen Ramsey is back. Ramsey has been activated from the physically unable to perform list and has returned to practice. That is a huge development for Pittsburgh's secondary. Because Ramsey is not just another cornerback. He brings experience, versatility, and football intelligence. The Steelers can use him in multiple ways, and his presence gives the defense another experienced weapon. But there is something important to remember. Returning to practice and being completely ready for NFL game speed are two different things. Ramsey missed time because of a knee issue, so the Steelers will have to carefully evaluate how comfortable and explosive he looks in game action. If Ramsey returns to full strength for the regular season, Pittsburgh's secondary could have a much higher ceiling. But Ramsey's return creates another major question in the defensive backfield. Joey Porter Jr. Porter remains on the PUP list, and his contract situation has also become a major storyline. Mike McCarthy has acknowledged that there is currently an impasse between Porter and the Steelers regarding his contract. Porter is entering the final year of his rookie contract, and this creates a complicated situation for Pittsburgh. On one side, the Steelers need talented cornerbacks. On the other side, there are contract and injury concerns. McCarthy has made it clear that he wants to coach Porter, but there is still uncertainty surrounding exactly when Porter will return to practice. That means Pittsburgh's secondary remains one of the most interesting position groups heading into the regular season. Jalen Ramsey is returning. Brandon Echols is competing for opportunities. And Joey Porter Jr.'s situation remains uncertain. A lot can still change before Week 1. Now let's talk about tonight's opponent, the Buffalo Bills. The Steelers and Bills will meet at Highmark Stadium for the preseason finale. Kickoff is scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern, and Buffalo has indicated that some projected starters could see action. However, Josh Allen is not expected to play. That means this game will not simply be a matchup between completely inexperienced backups. Some important Bills players could still be on the field, and Pittsburgh's young players will have an opportunity to compete against quality NFL talent. The Steelers currently have a 1-1 preseason record. They opened the preseason by destroying the Green Bay Packers 28-9. But then everything changed against the New York Jets. Pittsburgh's offense struggled badly, and the Steelers were shut out 17-0. So tonight, the most important thing is not necessarily the final score. It is improvement. Does the offense look more organized? Do the young quarterbacks make fewer mistakes? Does the offensive line provide better protection? Can the receivers consistently create separation? And can the defense put together a complete performance? Because a preseason record does not guarantee regular season success. But preseason performances help coaches make difficult roster decisions. And Pittsburgh has plenty of those decisions coming. The 53-man roster deadline is August 30th. That means every player on the roster bubble is under enormous pressure. One strong performance could help a player secure a roster spot. One poor performance could allow another player to move ahead of him. And that is why the most interesting players in a preseason finale are not always the starters. Sometimes the most important players are the ones fighting for the final few roster spots. Running back Max Iheanachor is one example. He has become a fan favorite, but he still needs to prove that he deserves a place on the final roster. For players like him, every carry matters. Every block matters. Every special teams snap matters. The same thing applies to the wide receiver room. DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. are established veterans in the group, but young receivers still have to fight for opportunities. Jeremy Bernard is one of those players. The rookie recently admitted that practicing against Aaron Rodgers can be intimidating. And honestly, it is easy to understand why. Imagine being a young NFL receiver and lining up across from future Hall of Fame quarterback every day. Rodgers brings decades of experience, preparation, and knowledge to every practice. For a rookie, that can be intimidating, but it can also be one of the greatest learning opportunities possible. Every practice rep becomes a lesson. Every mistake becomes an opportunity to improve. And if Bernard makes a big play against Buffalo tonight, it could provide another reason for the coaching staff to keep him around. Now let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. One of the biggest questions surrounding tonight's game is whether Rodgers will actually play. The Steelers have been cautious with their veteran quarterback throughout the preseason. And if Rodgers does not play tonight, that does not automatically mean something is wrong. There is very little reason to unnecessarily risk a veteran quarterback in a preseason game. But if Rodgers does get a few snaps, that would also be interesting. The Steelers want their offense to have some rhythm before the regular season begins. And the developing connection between Rodgers and DK Metcalf remains one of the biggest storylines surrounding this offense. If that chemistry translates into regular season games, Pittsburgh could have a very dangerous passing attack. But there is also a bigger reality surrounding Rodgers. He is 42 years old. His career is entering its final stage. And that makes the 2026 season different from a normal NFL season. The Steelers did not bring Rodgers to Pittsburgh simply to act as a temporary quarterback. They believe his experience can help this team compete in the AFC. And his reunion with Mike McCarthy makes the story even more interesting. These two won a Super Bowl together in Green Bay. Now, they have another opportunity together in Pittsburgh. But preseason is still preseason. The real test begins in September. The Steelers will open their regular season at home against the Atlanta Falcons on September 13th. So whatever happens tonight in Buffalo, the coaching staff will have very little time afterward. Quarterback decisions, offensive line decisions, young receiver decisions, running back decisions, cornerback decisions, special teams decisions. Every position group has players fighting for their NFL future. And that is why Steelers fans should not watch tonight's game only for the scoreboard. Watch the individual performances. Watch Will Howard. Watch Drew Allar. Watch Max Iheanachor. Watch Jalen Ramsey's movement and workload. Watch the young receivers. Watch the players fighting for those final roster spots. And most importantly, watch how Mike McCarthy uses his players. Because coaching decisions can reveal a lot. If a young player suddenly receives extended playing time, that could indicate that the coaching staff wants one final evaluation. If a veteran does not play, that could mean his roster position is already secure. And if a young player remains on the field deep into the fourth quarter, it could mean he is still fighting for his place on the team. That is the real story of preseason football. The scoreboard matters, but evaluation matters more. And tonight, Pittsburgh has one final major opportunity to evaluate its roster before the real season begins. Steelers Nation, one thing is certain. This final preseason game is going to give Pittsburgh plenty of answers before September. Can Aaron Rodgers lead this offense to another level? Will the Steelers really keep 4 quarterbacks? Can Will Howard and Drew Allar both remain on the roster? Can Max Iheanachor change the right tackle competition? Can Jalen Ramsey return to full strength? And what will ultimately happen with Joey Porter Jr.? Some of those questions could begin to get answers tonight. The rest will be answered over the next few days. But one thing is clear. The preseason is almost over. The experiments are ending. The roster is about to get smaller. And Mike McCarthy's first regular season journey as Steelers head coach is getting closer. Steelers Nation, tonight in Buffalo is not simply another football game. For some players, it could be the biggest game of their careers. Some players are fighting to protect their NFL dreams. Some veterans are fighting to strengthen their positions. And some young players are trying to convince the coaching staff that cutting them would be a mistake. So watch every snap tonight. Because after the preseason finale, the Steelers will have to make some extremely difficult decisions. Some players will hear their names called when the final roster is announced. Others will not. And somewhere in those final decisions, there could be a major surprise. So Steelers Nation, now I want to hear from you. Should Pittsburgh keep 4 quarterbacks? Should Will Howard and Drew Allar both make the roster? Can Max Iheanachor make a statement tonight? And how much can Jalen Ramsey improve this Steelers defense once he is fully healthy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want daily Steelers news, roster updates, injury reports, and NFL analysis, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because the preseason is almost over. The real Steelers football is about to begin. Steelers Nation, the wait is almost over. The 2026 season is coming.